Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Wednesday, January the 30th, 2019. And I'm with BZ Rieger and Lisa Flamino Rush, my gal pals. And tonight we have a title, Tango in Coherence with the Non-Interference Clause. And I'm going to come right out the gate and say I would love for both of you, actually, I'd love to hear from both of you as to what is the non-interference clause. Please be specific. I mean, you know, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I get the prime directive is not to interfere, which I have to say, Lisa and I have been watching the old SG-1 series, and I have to say that there was a whole lot of interference at every turn in that one, and it didn't always pan out so great. So I kind of get that in a big way, but there's a lot of things that I have found myself to be doing that come under the heading of interference when I didn't think I was interfering. And so having maybe a little more clarity on exactly what we might view as non-interference clause.
You want to start playing, Lisa, with that?
Okay. Well, I don't know what, you know, as far as non-interference clause, I don't know that I was aware of such a thing until I began to sort of experience the results of such a thing. Because I happen to be doing it all over the place. So, yeah. And actually, I just took my cues from nature that it's not a good idea to interfere. Right. Mostly because it doesn't feel good. Honestly, it just doesn't. As far as, you know, trying to interfere, there's nothing stopping you. You sure can. Give it a go. You can work hard at it. I know I did for several years, really. Tried to, I guess I had it in my head that if everybody knew what I did, the whole world would change in a blink of an eye. And as it turns out, that's not exactly how it works. You know, it's a real internal process. And so by my trying to force an issue on a person, you know, force them to see something the way that I was seeing it, or what that did was, well, it closed them down. It didn't open up anybody in the way that I was anticipating at all. And I'm now having the visual of, you know, assisting a rose to bloom would be probably the same effect, you know, where you just sort of ruin it. That's all I can say. You ruin it and you change the vibration, and really for me it's an alchemical inside out thing that happens. Now you can assist a person by modeling it, by holding the frequency, by drawing a picture of it, or writing a poem about it, or, you know, pointing at it in some fashion. But the viewing of it, or the grokking, or getting that internal alchemical response that I have, they have to achieve in their own fashion or manner, if you will.
Okay, so what you're referring to there for me applies to, you know, any of my activities, let's say, or anyone's, let's say, activities, let's say, of trying to wake a person up or share, you know, their perceptions of the world and that sort of thing. But I'm also wondering if, because the non-interference on a whole, on a whole now, not just in terms of awakening.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
That's where I've had trouble.
It's
I
a
mean,
whole.
yes, I was beating
Yeah,
people.
that was a big one for me. So.
Yeah, I was beating people over the head, and I don't do that anymore.
Right.
Because I do get that as far as the awakening and what it really is, not just awakening to the conspiracy, but awakening really to the source of who we are, for me anyway, is an inside job, and everyone is, going to make those choices. But for me, it extends past that and it goes deeper than that. And so it's been, for me, difficult to know those boundaries. And I suspect that it may be that, well, no, I know that it's that way for more than just me because, it just, I'm sure it has to be. Because interfering in each other's lives is something that is in some cases expected, taught, demonstrated, and guilted into. I mean, there's a whole lot of programming and conditioning that goes along in with all of this, so that when one starts looking at, okay, wait a minute, is this interfering? Is it because what I was starting to find for myself as I'm looking into that was the difference between interfering and assisting, because it can be twisted. Some situations where assistance is either desired and maybe even requested is not, because we all experience things in languages differently too, so there's a whole lot of misconceptions in my field and what I've seen in regards to non-interference and or versus assistance or help. Even compassion, for crap's sake, can get mixed up in there too, for me in particular, because it involves boundaries. This is like such a huge subject for me. So I don't know if that helped at all, show the confusion in my field where non-interference lies.
It's absolutely not just about waking people up or, selling them those chemtrails or,
right.
Vax, we got your back, It's, it's everything.
It is everything, because it goes into.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it does. When I started thinking about, my own boundaries and where they were and how I kept crossing them for myself all the time, where this particular subject is concerned, and when one starts really looking at their programming and conditioning and seeing, oh crap, that falls under that, or does it? And then it becomes, because it can be very confusing. And then there's a lot of questioning that goes on behind this one subject for me personally, because I've been very, very helpful in my life. I've assisted a lot of people. They've all appreciated it.
Depends upon what your definition of assist is.
Well, my definition and their definition sometimes is a little different, I will say. But again, if I was adhering to a non-interference clause, then perhaps I wouldn't have allowed myself to to find myself in that position, which I admit I have found myself in that position a lot in my life. So that's why I say there's a whole lot of other emotions and just stuff all tied up in this one little non-interference clause idea, thought process, feeling for me in particular, and I'm sure others, because boy, the energy is wanging off of me right this minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say what you were going to say, Lisa.
I don't remember now. I realized I was talking at the same time.
Well,
It will come.
yeah, I was trying to remember where Sheila was when you were gonna come in. It is a big subject, and it's a thought form, a thought process. It's a whole way of being, and it revolves around and is intertwined with being, with feeling, with being in coherence with yourself, coming into coherence with other beings, and how you relate, not run roughshod.
I freely admit I've done more than my fair share of running.
And you can do roughshod with a smile.
Oh, I'm the nicest roughshod rider you've ever seen. I know how to be as sweet as they come.
Right, but it's roughshod, none the same. You know, and think of all that when you guys were talking before, all of these kind of platitudes and euphemisms were just like parading by in my brain. You can't lead a horse to water, and Father knows best, and all of these different kinds of things, and whole ways of being, whole structures and inner dynamics between couples, between families, between co-workers, between things at school, at job, whatever it is. There talk about structures and layers and systems built on all of this, and that's a whole other huge conversation, because as you start to play in that and examine it, first to notice that they're all there, that it's maybe not intentionally from each individual being's perspective, but from the false construct's perspective, it's all done intentionally, because it's a pitting against, it's a running roughshod over, it's a conditioning to be run roughshod over, giving power outside of it oneself, and all those kinds of things. And when you play with it and start to illuminate that, you're like, wow, snap, I didn't see any of that coming in, and you're a little ticked off.
Well, I kind of, for some reason, this is making me think of, now, of course, I did a video today where I answered Randy's email. And I have to, in part of that, I was speaking on our programming and conditioning and the fact that it begins at birth. And quite frankly, this actually feels to me part of that now for some reason, because that programming and conditioning to not trust oneself is what I was speaking of. Not trust oneself because you're not big enough. There's somebody bigger, smarter, whatever the case may be from the time you're born, so that, and this is going to sound horrible, but it's a really good visual. Part of what we think we're doing as parents as protection is to interfere. And sometimes that interference I'm now seeing for myself helps to solidify that lack of trust of self. If a child or an infant does reach out and touch something hot and get burned, hey, they're going to know not to do it again. And they can rely on themselves in the fact that they know this to be a truth. I don't know. That sounds like very, and I know there's even a part of my own self that's going, ooh, but would you allow a child to be hurt? And no, I would, believe me, I smacked my own child's hand away from a hot something or another, or made sure the baby plugs were in the wall and all of those sort of things. But at this moment of now, I'm questioning some of that for myself, because those are the types of non-interference that lead up to other things. Part of my own looking at me and finding out about myself, in looking at my personal story, is seeing that some of the things that I had no one to rely on are part of the reason I am as resourceful as I am. And because of that non-interference of a neglectful parent, because that's what, everyone thinks when they hear that, kids raise themselves or latchkey kids and stuff like that. It's a neglectful parent. So it's like we set ourselves up for all kinds of crap one way or the other in the situation. But by not having that, so I kind of see where the non-interference is a good thing, and that it's been, we've unknowingly perpetuated that from the time we were born. Now, what the exact answer is as to how one protects without interfering. That's for others.
You can. I mean,
and I'm sure that is possible.
I did a lot of that with my kid, and obviously, if she was on this is just a wild, silly example, but because it wouldn't happen. But if she was on the edge of the train tracks and decided to keep walking anyways, and the locomotive was bearing down, I'd take her and bring her back. But one example, because it sounded like a locomotive, when she was little, I don't remember a big hurricane was coming. It was in summertime. And we had the house all boarded up. So I was living on the East Coast, house all boarded up. And she was little enough that, this was getting old fast. And, we'd only been at this for a couple hours. And it, Hurricane Bob was 80-some, 90-some miles an hour. And it sounded like freight trains when it was coming through. And, I want to see, why can't I go out? And so non-interference clause. So we packed her, and we had, the thickest pants I could find, and a coat, even though it was August, and she wore her dad's hard hat and some boots and held onto our hands, and she wanted to go outside and see, and this was the non-interference clause. So we were parenting to guide her, but this was her choice. After several hours of, no, I want to go see. Okay, fine. And you have to wear all this stuff. Okay, fine. And we went out and we walked around the corner, and one of the freight trains, came, and she was like, wow. Okay, let's go make it time. Right. So that's just one example of, how these different things work. And, you can talk a blue streak up, but there's an example. And so think about all of the experience and the learning and the choosing in future little ways and big ways that wanting to experience something, what's the big deal, what's it really, and not being, oh no, be quiet, shut up, da 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 da, right? You know, got to keep her safe, protecting. Go out. Well, so she was protected, you know, but it opened that door for all sorts of things and a whole capacity to learn and take in. First of all, to take in, what comes to mind now is when you're asking something, when you're connecting with others and you're asking someone to help you do something or for their input on something or whatever it is, for you to discern that as it comes across. So reading energy, I mean, that was a way to also teach reading energy. And, you know, she was getting straight answers from these two people. And yeah, there was a freight train out there, you know, kind of a thing.
And it teaches her to trust herself and what she's getting, and that it's important for her to lead herself.
Yes.
I did the same techniques with Jasmine, like, okay, so in life and death situation, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and then I'm going to spend some time and explain what happened there. Because I know what age appropriate, where she's at and what she can take in and what she's not ready for. So specifically with raising children, there is that. But the rest of it, I had to really choose my battles, because some of it was just ingrained patterning or the programming of my own, that I had to question, well, no, wait a minute, why am I insisting upon this? I mean, really? What damage does it done if she wears princess slippers to kindergarten?
Wait a minute. I need you to speak back up, Lisa. We couldn't hear you.
I had to ask myself, really, what kind of damage is being done by her wearing princess slippers to kindergarten, other than mom couldn't handle it? Yeah, so, and I tried to explain to her how impractical and that she would even hate it, but this is such a bad idea that she won't enjoy it, and she insisted upon it. And so I said, all right, well, enjoy your glass slippers at school today. And they lasted all of, I guess, 5 minutes, because, you know, for all the reasons mom spent hours trying to explain. So I had to really face some stuff within myself too.
Yes.
That programming that you're speaking of, Sheila, because I wanted to impose my will on her because A, I could, and B, because society was telling me I should, was another big piece of that too. A lot of stuff we do to kids is because this is what we do, and we continually perpetuate that. So it is good to question, you know, which I did. Why am I insisting upon this? Because
yeah, well, a lot of that is the root of shutting down down others, shutting down oneself, shutting down, well, because I said so, because it'd be a bloody bit easier if I didn't have to deal with, now I got to go to school or pack this, or doesn't matter. So, because it's not just, we're not in for the short things in here, we're in for the real coherence and the real, you know, connection. And there are so many things that, you know, one of the other, it was around the same time, so maybe it was in same age, but in December, but she wanted to go outside and play. It was not quite dusk and not quite dark, and she didn't want a coat on. And her aunt was visiting, and she said, well, you can't let her go out without a coat on. I said, sure I can. No, you can't. That's bad. And she went through this whole litany, and Charlotte's looking at me going, I'm going out without the coat. I said, okay, fine. I said, are you going to wear shoes? No. Okay, well, okay, you have fun. And here's a flashlight. And off you go. And, you know, probably don't stay out too long, but come back in about 10 minutes or I'm going to come looking for you. And the sister-in-law is like, the jaw is on the ground, right? So not only am I in the non-interference clause with the wee one, but with the relative, right? You know? And so I'm nuts. I'm irresponsible. You can hear all of these things going on, and I'm completely unfazed by either of them, because I know what's going to unfold, because I'm not interfering, and I have this big setup. Everything is on my side of being the good parent and all that kind of stuff. I just don't need to lead with that. So Charlotte walks out the steps. I watch her. She's out the steps, and we live on 2 acres of property at the time, and I probably sent one of the dogs out with her, which was even more fun. All the doggies are coming out. So she goes out, and the sister-in-law is continuing to kibitz and, the whole 9 yards. And I said, just wait for it. And so Charlotte goes around the house and knocks on the south-facing door. I said, hey, how's it going? And the dog's putting its nose up against the door. She said, it's cold out there. I said, imagine that. It's December. Yeah, I bet. How you liking it? It's good. Is it good? No shoes, no coat? I'd like to come in now. I said, okay, great. Open the door. I said, there didn't need to be a fight. And of course, the sister-in-law started to go with the rushing your cold, and at that point, Charlotte said, no, I got this. She went over and she got herself, properly attired, sat by the wood stove, and it had been forgotten. There was no trauma, there's no thing, and sat and read it. The reason I tell the story is because you have all of these dynamics, and we not only thwart others at every turn for giving them assistance or helping them and all these kinds of things, and we don't let ourselves go through a whole process of figuring out. It doesn't take very long, and those build muscles, so that when you really do need to have that self-awareness and that ability to read things and to discern, these are my friends and they're telling me X, Y, and Z, and I'm telling me, right?
That's right.
Then this has really served them well. And so often we don't allow any of that. In fact, we not only do we not allow it, but we go to the other side of that.
Of discouraging it.
Yeah, that you actually helped me see a really big thing there. That is, oh wow, that's a huge setup. We set, I in particular, I'm sure there's more than just me out there. I can see now where just that in the raising of children, myself, the way I was raised, the way I raised my child, sets them up for that time, because right there, your story in regards to Charlotte, had that gone a different way, the way that it probably did go, I know that it went in my house on more than one occasion. You're not going outside without your shoes and socks and a coat. You're just not. You're going to get sick. I can't afford it. No, right? So that sets up, A, they don't trust themselves because, mom and mom. And B, then someone outside of self knows more or better and should be followed. Well, no wonder when the teenage years come along that all of their friends know better, because we've already taught them that it's something outside of themselves that knows better or more. Don't trust yourself. At that point, almost anybody is to be trusted. And wow, that's a real setup that we've real number. So anyway, I see how far back. I mean, just because of that email, the response that I gave to Randy today, I can see that it starts at that end. And so it's no wonder that now at 57, I get confused, because I'm just now beginning to unwind and unbind. Mm-hmm. All of that I have continued to perpetuate upon myself. over the course of my entire lifetime.
And the non-interference clause just popped up when you were talking about that, because it deals with ourselves as well. It isn't just, a friend, a child, a partner, whatever, right? It's for ourselves as well. So it's for ourselves on multiple layers. If you hold them still separately, it's definitely from our soul to us. There is a non-interference clause. And then when you come into that holding, then there isn't that separation, but there is still parts where there's a non-interference clause. So that's
which is
well.
what I was going to say, which is because it is all choice. It is all a matter of choice, and that's why between the soul or the higher aspect of me and the little me, the little ego me, it's all choice because of that non-interference. Is that what you're?
Yeah, and it's a way to build those muscles. It's a way to build the relationship and the space. We'll call it the spatial relation and equanimity in your frequency, and how all of you and all of your bodies works within yourself, with you, because you're the genesis of everything out there. So if you're not, think about that, if you're not having a non-interference clause with yourself, well, then you're walking around kind of like this. The lights are turned off, and you can't see anything because you haven't
what I got going on over here.
Yeah, it describes a lot, doesn't it?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I just saw myself doing exactly that. That's why I said.
And then as there's the holding within you, right? So there is a team, and you're one, and you feel as one, and you play as one, and you experience as one. There is still a non-interference clause with self in, it's more nuanced in how it comes across, and there isn't quite the standoff, push me, pull you, or usually it's us, pushing, get out of my ear, kind of a thing. So it moves beyond that. It's much more integrated. It's much more nuanced, as I said, but it's still there in the, when you have a thought, or you go into a reaction, or you go into an experiential phase of testing something out, and there may be, as you fine-tuned and fine-connected the larger and larger aspects of you, so that you're coming into that singularity of you. Because there is that's the other thing, there's less and less separation, even less and less perceived separation from source. And so there's no such thing as the danger. There's no such thing as the protection against X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Because it's all an experience. It's all a creation. And it isn't, a good choice or a bad choice. It's the choice and the experience, and it's choosing one or the other is kind of an anathema, because you can have them all and go through that. So gets to be very freeing at a time, and it also makes making decisions and deciding where to go or what to do, what road, what path, unfolds, and all those kinds of things, because you can't get it wrong, and you can never get it done. And all of that is a, hey, really cool thing. So there's no time to run out, and there's no, and so you can, how much do you want to choose today? Or, how much do you want to experience? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's still in the non-interference, but it just appears and unfolds in a a much more nuanced way. But for most people, the whole non-interference clause within themselves and then with others, and you can actually have, it's a little bit more of this isn't quite right, but it's kind of close, more of an evolved approach to it. But you can have a non-interference clause with yourself in the shirt to yourself in the shirt as well.
Oh, okay. Now I'd love for you to explain, go a little bit more in detail with that.
Yeah, let's hear.
How would that look? What would that look like?
Well, if you're wrestling with a decision of either or, and part of you really wants to go do something and the other part just wants to argue. So you could get into the arguing, or you can be, this is where the come into coherence with is, right? So it's, okay, great. You want to go outside, it's just about dark and it's cold without shoes and a coat. No problem. Here's your flashlight. Careful down the steps. And, come back in 10 minutes. You can do the same thing with yourself. Because even in just in the shirt part of you, we can fractionalize ourselves off and kind of have a push me, pull you in and arguing them. And
no, I like where you're going with this, because that's a way of because I think that's something I have found myself doing without realizing that.
You're trusting and honoring all of you in the shirt.
All of what I get, no matter what it is.
Yes.
And if it turns out to be something that I didn't want, then I'll figure that out. Right.
But that's right. But see, that's all applaud. That's all
right.
Great. That's all. And again,
because it's all data, no matter what.
Yes. And it's only a perception of the other thing. And if it isn't something you want, well, great, because now you've cleared up what you do want.
Right.
And you've experienced, and this has given you more of a foundational data for other choice points. But all of that is very difficult to do when we started as wee ones. And from the moment that we that's good, that's bad, that's hot, that's cold, gotta be safe, don't do this, don't talk to strangers, don't listen to yourself, don't feel yourself, don't think for yourself, don't resonate with yourself, don't do it, just always outside of external power, separate, I mean, my God, it's a wonder that we're here right at this moment, changing everything.
No, think about it. It's quite amazing. Really, I have been doing a little bit of that myself recently. We have come a long way, yes. Baby.
Yes.
Let's face it. This is quite amazing. And this is just the beginning.
Yeah. And that's why I say you're not missing anything. People didn't go to the right school or read the right book or, listen to the right thing or stand with their leg at the right angle for just enough ohms and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, okay, maybe they did all that, cool. But the point is that you don't understand. 55 years I've been getting you don't understand. Well, apparently I don't understand. It's okay.
Probably best that way.
We flow through this. And, there's a lot of us who don't understand, and there's a lot more of us now who don't understand than there were before. It was kind of lonely in the don't understand land out there, So I don't know, maybe we're the blockheads. Maybe the head is hard as a rock or, whatever it is. And we just keep going through. But it's what I look at is that pulsing and listening to that pulse that's coming through. That's that tap. That's that, that it's love pulsing within you. It's the truth of you pulsing within you. And we can feel it. And even if we don't recognize it within ourselves, we can recognize it pulsing when we're watching someone else wrestling with something, or taking the pillow and putting it back over their head kind of thing. And you can see it's like a momentary stutter when they flip the pillow over, because there's that resistance to it. So that's why I said, as you were talking before, that there's the other non-interference clause that we're coming first, but it's a huge thing, and this is just breaking it down on the every subject layer of the non-interference, and non-interference with yourself, and just noticing it, realizing it. And as we talked about in another conversation the other day, sharing things where in the very on a very shallow level, this conversation right here is oh wow, I can see I did that, or oh wow, whoa, yeah, where we'd missed it, totally sloughed it off, blown it off, not paid attention to it, or it just wasn't, we were not capable of seeing it for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And now, we can see it in different ways.
Well, I can certainly see where it all begins for us as we come into these physical vessels. And I can also see that what I refer to as the twist on that, because on the one hand, I mean, what is it? The children are like sponges. Well, yeah, that's right. They sure are. And so it is. I mean, I don't know. I can very clearly see it's been just this week, actually, that I've seen a lot of my own exactly where and how the original not trusting of self happens. And I realized that it didn't just happen for me, it happened for all of us. Mm-hmm. For all of us, for any one of us that has had a child. And I know that I've been guilty of this myself, and I know that I heard it too. There's a monster in my room. No, there's not. You didn't hear that. There's nothing in your room. Go to bed. It's just little things like that. And it's not, I mean, that's not an easy thing to realize at first, or at least it wasn't for me. Because like I said, I realized that I perpetuated that same thing in my own child's life. But I also realized for me in particular that, and what I've seen about almost all children being closer to original source as they come in, of course, their frequency, I feel, and right now, is that they can see and feel things that we cannot.
Absolutely.
And so as we are teaching them, oh, well, because I can't see it, it's not there. And you're the big one. You're, I'm the one that was in charge of him and all the feeding, all the care, every single thing that a child needs or wants at that stage of life is provided by the parent, and therefore is, well, this person who cares for my every need and supplies everything I need tells me that it's not there. Well, I guess it must not be there. I guess I'm just crazy, and I just have to for crap's sake, I can see now why we all shut ourselves down as far as this trusting of self overall. And it doesn't really matter the exact same situation. I'm just using that because almost everyone has heard a child say that.
Right. And so let's let's play with it just a little bit deeper. So yeah, you can look on the individual beings, and then there's family units, whatever arrangement they come in, and there's care, and it's not just kids. You don't have to have kids to have this because you were a kid once, and you're in different social situations. Okay, so there's that, and that begets more of that, and it's kind of a cultural, you got cultural situations and all that kind of stuff. But the root is from the false construct. So the false construct spun all of these roots and yarns and wove the tapestry together quite deliciously. It's a very intricate and complex, self-replicating, self-evolving, self-perpetuating, self-assuring, meaning that, so you want to start right from the very beginning, because these Hue beings are amazing beings. They're just starting with the stuff that's within them of their DNA, and even with the tinkering, and even with, slicing and cutting most of it off, and the capacity of the brain, of the organic human brain, and cutting that down so that there's only about 10% that still functions. They're still amazing beings. So you've got to have all of these root, causes. Ever think of a big tree? If someone says, well, the roots are in your septic system and it's blocking it off. There you got a metaphor. They're just, those roots are these tentacles, and they're strong, and they knot, and they bind, and they block off things that you don't want them to. So that's all absolutely by design, because we don't want any of those you don't understanders getting through. Because when you got one pop up over here, and before you know it, people are saying you don't understand a lot, but they're going, wait a minute, and then you got them pop. So we're tunneling through the roots and getting through. So all of that is on purpose. And when you have the not trusting, because there absolutely are monsters, I'm talking all from linear perspective, there absolutely are monsters, and they're real, and they're not just third dimensional ones. And so all of that is there. And what better way to hide in plain sight and to do your monsterly cohorting and all your things, because children aren't believed about the monsters, and they can scream that there's monsters and be taken and brought back, in the wee hours, and no one will be wiser, because no one will listen, because the children are shutting down, and the parents are taught to shut down, and then the school and the this and the that, and that's why I say it's this beautiful, very complex, far-reaching, interwoven thing. And we are all part of, that's where you come into the complicit in various different ways and various different things. But we're complicit in the shutting down of, it's against social mores. It's against social norms. It's against the group think, the hive mind, all these different ways to look at it. If, you have the different cultural changes, or freeing of this thought or this thought. Well, the only reason those things happened because there was enough of those you don't understanders popping around, and they're popping like popcorn, all this stuff that they they're getting it just fine and they understand, right? Then that's why you have these flexing of the social norms, or society had a change of things, because you need to let the pressure valve open in different ways. And so right now, there's a number of beings who look at various different issues around behavior and sexuality and all these different things. And that part of that is, again, to expand it on the other side of it. So think about the constriction before. So it's like an expansion bubble, which is the constriction with a twist on the reverse, because you go so far the other side that you normalize. I'm not saying that for each individual being that's coming from their heart, right, that it's an abnormality or abhorrent, but you do normalize abhorrent types of behaviors. And so you, again, because no one's thinking for themselves, no one's feeling for themselves, no one, as a general rule, and it's really perpetuated, that it's not so much you love who you love, you love who you think you should love, because hey, it's the thing to do in love, and love isn't anywhere in the building. Right. Because when you love who you love, it just is, you just are, you just do, you just be. Instead of the right way, or we got to have, a new law or a new clause or a new TV show or a new action rights or whatever. I mean, that's a good tip-off. When you're seeing any of those things, it's not intuitive, organic based. It's a spin-off of the false construct base, and instead of kind of the constrictive or the old-fashioned or the not human rights, not civil rights, not gender rights, however you want to do it, it's the other side. But you got so many of those you don't understanders around, and they're, my God, look at them, they're everywhere now. You got to go to the other side because the way that you've been doing before hasn't been working. And it's another way to sneak more monsters under the bed, because they can walk right around what's been now being portrayed as, the norm or the new thing or coming out. And when that is genuine and that is heart-based and that is the expression of choice of that individual being, for that individual being's ness and sake from their own, because they are the genesis of it, then it's easy to sneak all the other things in, because again, people aren't feeling for themselves, they're not being for themselves.
Well, that's what it feels to me like. I've been saying that I think of being open to considering things, and then this particular one is the very next for me. First I had to be open to seeing that I really wasn't trusting myself to begin with, because if anybody would have said, well, Sheila doesn't trust herself, I'd have said, yes, I do. But no, I didn't. And I'm getting better at that, but that is a tough nut to crack at first. And it is a groove that I personally need a ladder to haul my ass up out of. It's a very deep trench. Yeah. And so even when one thinks they're making progress, they may find that, oh, wait a minute, not so much all the way in everything in every moment of now. So getting to the non-interference, first and foremost, developing the trust with self, because then when learning how to navigate non-interference with others as one is gaining trust of self, has also, it can prove a bit tricky.
It's a tango.
Yeah, boy. And I didn't go to dance class like Lisa did. So,
Well, you think it would help. Dance classes.
but not so much.
Very, very difficult.
Well, it's at the very least, it's twofold, because you come into coherence with yourself. So you could even start that. That's why I said at the very least it's twofold. So you come into coherence just with you in the shirt. Never mind, if you're still holding it separately, the rest of you, right? You come into coherence here and the non-interference clause within here. And then as you're working on coming into a wholing and into coherence with all of you, right? Which is beyond supported with the frequencies and everything now. But you're coming into coherence with, yes, others, but you can start with thought forms. So before you're even connected with an other, there's like coherence with yourself, and then the thought forms of others out there, and you come in. So it is about it is absolutely about trusting and being in command of one's self, and then command of one's interactions. And when one is flowing in coherence with the non-interference, there is absolute trust, and there's absolute confidence, and there's absolute capability, whatever the situation is, even if it's a scary one, or even if it's a big pothole and your axle just went in and you're going, okay, because it's a way of being and navigating and flowing, and it helps you choose and create, not only in that particular connection and creation where you are, but in all things surrounding it. So when someone says, well, there's so much going on and there's so much chaos, and how do I know where to look at? Well, if you go into and you truly start to feel into and experience the non-interference within yourself and then others, it's very clear very quickly, whether you knew it as a non-interference clause or not, but there is no need to sell. And what's fascinating is, if you a question that comes up, that's been coming up a lot, said slightly different ways and in all different mediums. So right standing next to me, on the phone, in the text, on the this and that, whatever different ways we have of communicating things. How do I wake people up, or how do I share about this, or how do I this, or the same kind of thing, right, in various different ways. And part of it, my answer is basically the same answer, and it's all about feeling into it, and it's all about being clear within oneself and trusting within oneself, because then the answer is very clear, and it is coherence, and it is connecting, no selling. There's trust both ways, and you're love, so you be love, and that will look and feel and be experienced in different ways depending on what the situation is. The thing that is always the same is, it's like this big glowing ball, very colorful, very shimmery, very multi-layered and effervescent, and has the most incredible complex, think like a very intricate sphere of a crystal where you can see and you can look at it and look at it and look at it, and wow, and different light and hits all these things, and you notice and you have a feeling, there's a resonance to it, there's an energy to it. So when you're that sphere is you. And the best way I can describe it is that knowing comes over you. There is a calmness and a confidence and an absolute trust, not only in yourself, but in other. And the coherence in between and surrounding both of you, if it's one of each of you or a group of you or a structure of you, whatever it is. And it's like you put on glasses, magical glasses, and it's like, oh yeah, I see. Wow, of course, it's always been there. It's always been so clear. Like you always wanted to paint and you never could paint. And then you went through this process. You stood in this sphere and you were this sphere that I'm talking about. And the whole way that you move through the inspiration and you move through the technique of painting and you move through looking at light and feeling the light and showing the light, So again, you don't have to be good at painting or no, but you know what you like, right? And you see the interest. So it's definitely an intangible, but it's this sphere that I'm talking about is an alchemical metamorphosis that it's more apt to say reveals itself than it changed into this, because it's always been there. But the alchemical reconfiguration, you could say, you pulled the cords on the Venetian blinds, it's like, hey, look at that, I let the light in. The cords were always there.
Yeah.
And as you have one moment here or there, you can replicate that. You can feel it. You don't think it to death. You just feel it. That makes sense?
Well, yes, but I want to make sure that, because we've talked a lot about not trusting of self and how that relates to the non-interference clause. And I just want to, because when I don't trust myself, then the non-interference clause is a little more difficult to recognize when that needs to be in play. In other words, where it would be in play were I trusting self.
Right. So you can, if you're not trusting yourself, there's other kind of clues and ways you can key in. Are you being present in, say, if you're with somebody else, right? And you're not trusting yourself, like, psst, you're stepping over the line. Psst, come back here. You could, if you're in coherence with the other being and you're noticing and you're present with them, you could see physical signs like the eyes glazing over, the kind of the twitchy thing, or the moving back, or all of those kinds of things. It's just like if you watch, people say, oh, well, all of a sudden that dog just went after my dog. Well, no, actually, if you've been paying attention, there's a lot of trash talk going back and forth, and they could have been 50, 100 feet, 250 feet or more away from each other, and it was getting loud and you weren't paying attention. And then, right, so there's always all sorts of signals. There's all sorts of stuff going on.
Right. Now, that would cover for me, what you're describing there sounds, again, more like in the vein of sharing a waking up scenario type situation. So I would love it because I personally, and more than me, because I can feel it, let's graduate on to something that a lot of folks have a lot of trouble with, because it's in personal relationships where things like, get confused between assistance or help that it may be requested or whatever.
Sure,
That,
love them. Love them. Be
well,
love.
yeah, see, that's tricky because of the whole, your idea of love and my idea of love, and
Yeah, but I'm not
the
talking
truth
about
of
that.
what love is. Or,
But you just be love. So if you be love, you don't have to open your mouth. You radiate that feeling of the most expansive connection and coherence and be love. So that means that it then mitigates the need to give advice, to give a suggestion. Simply be there, be with them, be present, be in coherence. You don't have to say anything. In fact, oftentimes better not to say anything. Be there. Be here now. Be here now. Be here now with yourself, because in that moment, you're giving an incredible gift to yourself in doing that. So here's an example. We'll take it a little bit away from interpersonal. So you're I'll have to do this in an oblique way because I got my own constraints. So yesterday I had to take this drive for half of my day off to do this emergency thing. And so I'm taking this drive, there's another being there, and I'm having a conversation, and this being is talking about different things. And sure, I could have interjected either questions into what was going on, because I knew a lot of side of the story that this being didn't, we'll say. But if I interjected anything or asked questions, that's interference. In the being completely present and being completely connected in this moment, in this energetic envelope, in coherence, we're in a car, the whole car is an energetic envelope, and there's a field of coherence in there, right? Just in the quality of my being, right, present with myself and them, and being love, shifts the frequency. So the molecular structure of the other being on all of their bodies, lest they jump out of the car, is shifting, is being given, holding the space for, the opportunity to, because we all flow, that kind of bandwidth, that quarter again, we all flow in the bandwidth, the breadth of that, of any given frequency, whether it's of the word or the particular conversation or whatever it is, right? So if just I can pull one piece out, so one part of the example was, the other person was going on about something, and there's those three human emotions: greed, fear, and greed. So yeah, you could interject a whole lot of stuff to that. You could sell them on love. You could sell them on quantum. You could sell them on ascension. Okay, fine. Or you can just simply be, and the quality of that beingness and the resounding, it's not silence, it's the resounding cacophony of those frequencies. I'm the one driving, so I'm just driving along. It has an alchemical reaction.
No, I know exactly what you're speaking of. Because you just beautifully demonstrated exactly what took place earlier this week for me with Lisa, and uh, seeing a few things about self as part of that whole, process thing I got going on, by just holding that frequency. So I do get exactly what you're saying there.
And
Again,
and
a
you
new concept for Sheila about don't gotta say anything.
right. Again, that's why. And I'm not talking about. I'm talking about just in general communication. Forget about the awoke part or not. It doesn't matter, because it's actually all the same, really. It's not. There's not one, and then you go graduate to this. You actually go and you start there, and you're always there, kind of a thing. So, open-ended question, and a question that's open-ended, that you're not needing the answer to, but the question is the gift, that's the seed that lets the other being play with the space, the sphere, the frequency of the question, and for themselves going to answer that question, or feel into that question, or try on, which is a lot of the ones I try to do, is try on the question and what it does, and it's kind of this stuff going on, because they can feel it. Enough said. That's all. And then you just roll with the next thing. Then they may jump to this or that, or you see something, or a thought comes into mind, like, because we were going to do something, right? So I had to, oh, did you hear from this being about X, Y, and Z? Oh yeah, and but because they're not isolated, there is a coherence, there is a resonance and a connection, because it's all frequency. So you choose the frequencies that you swim in, and you may need to navigate over, again, with the idea of the bandwidth. So the width of these are just placeholder words, but the width of the corridor of the conduit that frequency is running, you may need to travel to their edge of over here, right? And then the hand opens to lead them across. Again, that's where assistance comes in. It's not, you're not pulling them, you're not dragging them, like, say, here, you got to do this, or I know you understand and I don't, but come with me anyways, kind of a thing, and if it's not wanted, or only a little bit, or a finger touch, or they walk a few steps and then they turn around the exact opposite, great, because there's no attachment to it. What's the saying, even in on this planet, love is freely given with no expectations or attachments. It just is. Because if there's all those expectations and attachments, it's not love. And I'm talking just of the human sort.
Well, that's why I said, that's one of the first things that that I realized was the definitions of things just aren't. We all speak a different language. So, well, this is a huge subject, and did we even really get to? Or is that what the whole thing, tangoing in coherence? Or did we even get to that?
Because we saw that there's a dance floor and kind of some steps and stuff. Yeah. And what's interesting is that I think one of a wonderful thing that we played with is that this non-interference clause involves everything. And it's not just about selling or not, of, being woke or not. In fact, it had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, quite frankly, I see the non-interference clause which, that's another metaphor. The prime directive of non-interference is not something we've practiced on this planet ever. And it's, as a matter of fact, we're taught to interfere at every level.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's part of what the false construct is built on, is thwarting any prime directive of non-interference. Because, you know,
Well, and
bloody hell, we don't care. We're doing this, and we got them. You know, they're under our thumb.
well, I mean, certainly, certainly, it seems to me like that was certainly the best place to start, because not trusting self. And like I said, this is something that just this week I finally really saw the root cause of my not trusting myself. And the moment I saw that, I can see that it is for all of us in this manner. It wasn't just poor little Sheila who was, told by her parents that she didn't hear that, she didn't see that. No, we've all been told that.
Yeah.
All of us at some point in time.
The metaphors have all been different, but yes, it's exactly so.
Yes. And we've continued to perpetuate that on ourselves and each other at every step. I mean, I'm even thinking about how we, tell kids about, oh, that's just your imagination. Oh, for crap's sake, because that's how we create. Now I see how how exactly this is, and how important now it is for all of us to ask ourselves these questions so that we can unbind and unwind and not perpetuate this going forward. This is the way to change the paradigm. And
that's why playing with understanding, noticing, tangoing with, and coming into coherence with, from a very simplistic level, at the very least, the non-interference clause helps you sidestep, alleviate, quit doing all of those other things that you just enumerated, because you realize the ramifications of self and to others, every time that you do it. You don't need to lament past dunnings of it. Just quit doing it now.
Be done.
well, yeah, I mean, yes.
And there's great things to, because this is just, we just played with a little bit of this part of the, this is the new one that came in today, is Tango in Coherence with the Non-Interference Clause. And, there's more to play on it, but a lot of that people can play on their own with. The next part, when we get to it, is non-interference guides our multidimensional interplay. And again, that's just on every level and layer. It isn't just about being awoke. It's just in the some of the examples that we talked about tonight, the going to see the hurricane or the cold or whatever it is, that changes as you come into that. It changes the whole aliveness and partaking of each individual's multidimensionality, even if they have no clue what multidimensionality is, because they are it. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a definition, and they've read the right book and gone to the right magic school and all that kind of stuff. And that's part of the interplay, because it's like turns the light on in the dark room.
Well, it has certainly shined a whole lot of light in my dark room. I'll just say that. And some things that appeared and felt rather scary in that dark room turned out to be, just me. So, yeah. Wow. This has been a really big one. I hope I didn't derail it too much there, BZ. But it was very beneficial for me and timely too. So, do either one of you have anything you wish to add to this energetic envelope?
Just that you are loved, so go be it.
Well, we will have all the usual things in all the usual places, and I echo BZ's sentiment as always. And I would love to hear from anyone. If you have any questions or anything about the non-interference clause or anything you ever hear on this channel, in the comment section or any one of the email addresses that are in the show more section of every video. So till next time.
Much love.